Okay.
Yeah. Welcome to Changing Times, Changing Worlds, Otherworldly show, where we attempt to show all sorts of perspectives on the the otherworldly, on the occult, on supernatural, paranormal, metaphysical. And tonight, the show is going to be about taking the things that you do when you make. A lot of us make things and putting magic in them so that they become a magical tool, as well as or simply blessing them. Actually, since I'm not doing it, we will wait and hear what SewMagical has to say. SewMagical is, I met her in the SCA, and she is a wonderful diviner. She does a broad spectrum of handcrafts. She is the lady who keeps the Changing Times, Changing Worlds computer website going, and she has taught many classes, and you can look them up. There's some on the website that you can probably download. She's a jewelry maker. She does embroidery. She does sewing, tarot reading, teaching, and she ran a sewing related website for many years. And I will say that historically, people do have put energy into it. When women would send their husbands off to war, they would bless the shirts to repel. Even First World War, they were putting blessings on their husbands' uniforms so that they could, or the shirts they would wear under them, to turn bullets. This is just normal magic work. And we're going to talk about it. Well, SewMagical is going to talk about it. So take it away.
Tchipakkan, it sounds like you need some coffee. I'm a big believer in coffee. Thank you. All right. I am not a person who does a lot with ritual in the sense of a formal ritual. I tend more to do things on the fly or just as they come to me. But any action that you take repeatedly, or that you take with intention, with awareness of what you are doing, can in fact become a ritual. A ritual could be something as simple as my mother, when she used to make my lunch as I went off to school, would very often tuck a little note in with the sandwich. Could be something as, I love you, have a good day, do well on your test. But it was a ritual that was done with wishes for my well-being. People who tend to develop their own rituals. It could be putting certain music on. It could be anything that makes you comfortable and helps you enjoy your creative process. Adding intent to what you create doesn't have to be something formal. It doesn't have to be a whole woo-woo kind of ritual. It could be concentrating on what you are making. It could be concentrating on who you're making it for, why you are making it. So it doesn't have to be something very formal. I've seen I will be posting a link to my Pinterest board I created with both books and websites that talk about putting magical intent into an item, creating with intent. The best site I found breaks it down into 8 steps. And like I say, it's far from being the only site. It talks about, let's see, break it into small steps. If you're having trouble finding the time to make something, allow yourself a 5-minute period. It doesn't have to be, it could be more than that, but if it seems overwhelming, do it for 5 minutes. 5 minutes is not a big deal. It's 2 songs on the radio. Remember listening to songs on the radio? Plan what you're going to do. Prepare in advance if you can. One person said that when she puts down her embroidery, she threads a needle with what her next color is going to be, so that when she goes back to work on her embroidery, that step is already done. It makes the process smoother. Share what you are working on. It could be just telling someone about it. It could be sharing a picture on Facebook or Instagram or whatever other site you're involved with. Allow yourself both time to learn a new skill if you're doing something new, and learning how to produce using that skill. For someone who's, let's say, who's embroidering, it could be not only learning a new stitch, but learning where to use that stitch. If you're crocheting, it could be, like I say, not only learning a new stitch, but learning how that stitch looks. That can apply to anything. If you have a routine that you usually use for creating, then get into the habit of doing that routine. Lately, when I go into my studio, I make it a habit to pull the blinds up on the window to let some daylight in. If it's nice out, I'll open the window and actually let horrors, fresh air in. I also have a diffuser, humidifier / diffuser. Looks like it's weird. It's shaped like a wooden onion. I call it my electric onion, but I have some essential oils that I put in to relax me and give it. Actually, I use, I think, orange to kind of refresh me and make me productive. Set an intention. Think about what you're making, who you're making it for, what's involved in making it. Does it have a purpose? Is it to help someone? Is it to heal them? I'm going to be working on a crocheted hornet's nest that someone asked me for, that I am going to, and while I'm making it, I'm going to be concentrating on the person I'm making it for and what I want it to accomplish, which is to deter hornets from invading her space. Don't be afraid to think out of the box, to think of things differently, to try something new. If you find yourself getting bored with making an item, then think about doing something different. No one has to see your experiments, but sometimes doing them will help give you a new perspective on things. And finally, it says to think about why you're creating, which to me is part of setting the intent of just sharing, thinking about what you do, why you do it. Let's minimize this, thank you. And that these steps can apply to anything that you create. Adding magic to it, action and intent equals magic. By doing it, by thinking about what you're doing, you're creating magic. Like I say, I tend to do it very much on the fly. I don't do a lot of formal rituals. And these are steps which unconsciously I've already been doing. So to me, that's what adding magic to an item or is when you create it. If you're looking at something, adding magic to something, let's say that you've purchased, the steps are going to be similar. Think about what you're doing. You can cleanse the item if that works for you. How can I say that? Do what feels right to you. If you're putting intent into something that you've purchased, why did you purchase it? Think about what you want the item to accomplish. Concentrate on that. Ask for help from whatever greater forces you perceive, whether it be God or goddess or just the great power. And that will, to my mind, will imbue it with energy. Questions, comments, disagreements?
Well, what you said reminded me. Oh, got somebody else. Sorry.
Yeah, I was suddenly realizing, based on what you've been saying all along here, is that an awful lot of difference in anybody's life, especially mine, is whether or not you're acting with intent. Now, I have to slice it kind of thin here because, all right, I want scrambled eggs for breakfast. Now, I have the intent to make scrambled eggs. I pull out the frying pan, I pull out the eggs. But that's just the mechanical intent. I can make the eggs without thinking about them, but I should be thinking about them. I should be thinking that I am making a meal for myself that I will enjoy and that is nutritious. And I have the same concept in mind because I find out that I am much more likely to do it that way when I'm doing something for Jen. Even if it's just same old, same old. But once we know what she wants to eat, that I go in and, it's like, all right, yogurt and granola. I pull out the scale, I pull out the yogurt, I measure the yogurt exactly. I get out the scoop, I put in the granola, and there's intent there. First of all, just from a professional standpoint of getting it right, portion control and all that, but also getting it right from the standpoint that this is Jen's breakfast. It's important. And I could probably do a lot more in my life by taking seemingly mundane things and sticking more intent and purpose into them than I have been doing.
Well,
What I was going to say was in Runewalder, there is a symbol for making something sacred. And I thought that that was awfully silly because everything is sacred. Everything is created, whether it's a rock or a tree or creature, they're already sacred. And then I figured out, but when you have taken bits and pieces of different things and you've created something new out of them, that's where you use the symbol, because you have made something different. You've taken wood and you've turned it into table. You've taken wool from a sheep's back and you've turned it into yarn. You've turned it into a sweater. And to bless this new thing that you have just made is how I interpreted that, how to make it. Because the sheep was sacred, the wool was sacred, the wood was sacred, but then when you've created a new thing out of it, then maybe a special blessing for that. It's like when you create a servitor, you give it direction. You say, this is what you are supposed to do. Anyway, back to you.
That symbol could also be applied to something that you've purchased. I mean, not all of us have skill in, let's say, woodworking. If we want more of a wand than just a plain stick that we have gathered, if we want something that has engraving on it, that is turned, that is painted, that might be something that we can't do ourselves. So we purchase one, and adding that symbol to it could increase the sacred level that we assign to it, for lack of a better phrase. Yeah, so it could be used in that way also.
Well, it suddenly occurred to me while Tchipakkan was talking that, you take all of these things, these components that are already sacred, and you turn them into something new. And there's value in making this new thing sacred so that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
And what you were saying about making Jen's breakfast, it reminds me of what my husband and I do in the mornings. We can make coffee for ourselves, but it always tastes better when the other person makes it for us.
Anything you don't have to cook tastes better.
No. I'm remembering when my mother, who did not believe in magic, used to make breakfast for us kids. She would say, magic adagic, please and thank you, because of course, please and thank you are the magic words. And she would wave her hands over the frying pan. And my sister could tell when mom had not magicked her eggs. She said, you didn't magic them. It's like, oh, okay. And then she would magic them, and then they would taste better. So
I like it.
That's a thing.
It's because it's made with love, with affection.
Yes.
It tastes different. It tastes better.
And it's like when I do something for Jen, if it's done with that kind of intent. I mean, I do dumb things like, well, maybe, I don't know if this is magic or not, but surprising somebody with something they really like when they weren't expecting it. Like, I see her, so I'll go to Wegmans and I'll get, whatever normal nonsense we need. And then I'll come back and say, oh, by the way, I went to the bakery and bought you a couple of cookies. And they were purchased. You talk about purchasing things so magical. And you look at them and say, would she enjoy this? Would this make her laugh? And I remember finding a box of 2 cookies with ice cream cones iced onto them. I said, I didn't get you just cookies, I got you cookies and ice cream. and,
Yes.
and I can feel the energy when I do that.
He has developed that skill very well.
And
Going through the supermarket and you see something that you know the other person likes,
yeah,
and somehow it just falls into your cart. And
it leaps into the cart.
yeah, it leaps into the cart and, oh, gee, how did this wind up on the shelf in our pantry?
Magic.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I guess I practice magic every
Magic.
time I go to the grocery store.
Yep.
It's the, dare I say, the magic of love.
Well, that's what it is.
Oh,
I
our love started magically anyways.
well, yeah, but what has happened is it has infused my whole life and every action. So that if I'm doing anything that has an impact on her, it's based on that and powered by that. So
I
this
know
isn't
about
really
that.
the kind of happily ever after sort of love, but it's like I commented somewhere on a post on Facebook, I think from, I forget who, but the put up with you thing that Jen posted. And I once asked my father how he and mom had lasted so long. He said, well, I guess it's because we learned to put up with each other. And they had been married 43 years when he died. And if he had lived, they probably would have gone on a lot farther. But, putting up, it was like that old phrase, settling down means settling for, which I think puts a negative slant on it.
No.
But I look at, it's just like, if I go back and do it all over again, would I change anything? Damn, no. I'd lose what I've got now.
To get back to the subject at hand, I'm the heavy crafter of the pair. I've been crafting my entire life. I'm doing CrossFit right now that I chose well before COVID. Purchased from, I forget if it was AliExpress or Wish. And I bought it with the intent of making it for a friend of mine here in Syracuse, who has most recently had a cancer scare. I don't know how the biopsy came out. She was losing her internal lady parts over it. And I realized I need to imbue this with healing energy and get it finished. She is a Hello Kitty fan, which is the choice of the design. And I think basically I've started to work on this during Zoom meetings as well. And I think the sense of community from the Zoom meetings is helping with the magic too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I get into one of these meetings and suddenly I'm full of ideas and I'm feeling the energy. And, there's this definite community energy there that's incredibly therapeutic and very beneficial. So that's why I showed up tonight, even though I didn't think necessarily I had anything much to hear from it, but it just reminds me. Yeah, really.
He always gets
Imagine
into it,
my
yeah.
surprise.
Now, I've always found a lot of magic crafting in groups. Almost everywhere I've been, everywhere I went, I was living in New Hampshire. I started a group of knitters or crafters or something somewhere. And I haven't done that here because we just have too much it keeps us from being able to do much out of the house anyway.
Well, right.
But knitting and working in community on crafts, I wondered if you were going to touch on that.
Well, the
And if not
idea,
specifically, yeah.
the idea of creating as a community actually has a long history. Think about the old idea of ladies quilting circles, where they would come together to work on one quilt for one of their members, or barn raising, where the community would come together as a whole to raise a structure. So that idea is not something new. I know that I myself have gotten a fair amount done by just like you, bringing along my whatever I'm working on and sitting there working on it, during a meeting. There is, I believe that there is, a sense of energy by doing something together as a group. Ravelry, which is a if you're a fiber crafter of any type, you may have heard of Ravelry.
I have my frog and ripped pint glasses in the cupboard in the kitchen.
Sounds familiar, but I couldn't say for sure.
Online community for knitters, crocheters, and weavers.
Facebook for fiber artists. There are groups who will actually have in-person meetings where you just sit and socialize, and everybody is working on their project. And if you run into a problem, hey, so-and-so, can you help me figure out this stitch? Or that's really the whole idea behind groups like the American Sewing Guild, neighborhood groups who meet, and just like here, there'll be a speaker or there'll be people sharing their projects. Community, I think, is a big part of creating. I think that's one of the nice things about a platform like Facebook. It can encourage community. There are groups where you post a question, and within an hour, you'll have 43 responses, all telling you ways to handle your problem, or complimenting you on what you've done if you post a picture. I think that sense of community is something that, especially with COVID, we may be losing.
Yeah.
Because it's been so hard to meet in person and get that kind of in-person support. Zoom and Facebook are not ideal substitutes in my view, but you make do with what you've got.
Yes.
It's something, it's a technology that we didn't have 10 or 20 years ago, or it was just beginning 10 or 20 years ago.
And I suspect over time, we're going to start developing the ability to transmit these same energies over the digital lines.
Right. And I also look at the fact that one of the things that has been the whack with the big clue stick is realizing that this is the medium for people like me
and me
who have mobility problems, who can't just go to some coffee shop and hang out. Whereas anybody who with the Zoom app, I can say, all right, fine, it's not perfect, but you see my face, you hear my voice, the body language is there, and you can show pictures, you can share screens of things you've done. It has opened up my world a lot. And
I don't think Bill would get into all this with me if it weren't for Zoom.
No, if we actually had to go someplace and sit through it, and I look at this and see this as an essential technology going forward, and it's only going to get better because, all right, fine. We got a 2D image now. We see each other better, with more bandwidth and better equipment. Pretty soon we'll be putting on our Oculus headsets and sitting in a room together talking about this. But in the meantime,
I'm going to jump in there and remember what I think it was Facebook wanted to be, where everybody could create their own avatars, and you could you could create what you wanted to present yourself as.
Yes.
Which is lovely in one aspect, but in another aspect is kind of scary because you never know who they are. Whereas, as you said,
right,
when you got a camera on you, we know who you are and we hear your voice, and there it is.
Right.
But I'm
and that's certainly, it's identical in many ways to Second Life, where you created an avatar, and whether it resembled you in any aspect whatsoever was up to you. And I get that same thing because here, well, we have the harsh reality of the camera. It's sitting there and it's projecting our picture just as we are. And I think there is an equalizing factor there. Anybody who wants to go live on these things, well, here I am. And it's just
Right.
like you were, I could be sitting in the same room with all the rest of you. And I would look just like this, except for the background.
I'm going to suggest we may have strayed a bit from the topic, though.
Well, we did, but
Yeah.
I think we'll pull back to that. And I think the idea, though, is,
It's a valid topic, maybe for another time, even.
well, oh, gee,
What does
another
online
topic.
gathering do for us, sir?
But how does the online gathering help our crafting, help us imbue our crafting with magic? That's when I'm going
Yes.
to kick back to Lois.
I'm crafting or any other activity.
Mm-hmm.
As Lois was saying, it's not just stuff you're crafting. It's intent.
Yes.
And people have, as many different people as there are, I think there are that many different ways of putting intent in an object. It could be, it can be done simply by saying, okay, I want this to heal my friend so-and-so. And for you, that works.
Mm-hmm.
Someone else could say, but I have to do a formal ritual. I have to set a circle. I have to call the quarters. I have to, approach it. I have to take a ritual bath before I can do this ritual creation. And for them, that might be the way to go. I don't believe that as long as you are coming from a positive viewpoint, I don't think there is a wrong way to apply intent. I don't even want to get into the idea of working with negative energies, that's not something I'm comfortable with. Although, believe it or not, the first time I created a voodoo doll, was my mother taught me to do it. But she was very clear that it couldn't be wishing injury on the person. And it was a very simple thing, just a wad of tissue, wadded up with another tissue wrapped around and a rubber band to make the neck, draw a image of the target on the tissue, and stick it with pins. I had a teacher that I really, really disliked. I think I was in junior high school. And the wishes that we put were, I wanted to be out of his class. I didn't want him as a teacher anymore. And don't you know, I actually was transferred out of his class. Coincidence? I don't
maybe.
think so.
Well, I
But-
really totally agree with the concept of not working with negative energy, because I keep thinking about two quotations I've heard. One is that, well, working with negative energy, basically you're working with a curse of some kind. You know, you want something bad to happen to somebody else. And that was described as picking up a hot coal in your hand and throwing it at that person to hurt them. You always get hurt worse than they do. And negative energy always comes back to bite you in the ass. Oh, the best one I heard was from Carrie Fisher, who once said that resentment is like taking poison and waiting for the other person to die. And I really, I just don't even want to go to negative energies. And I like the idea that you managed to take this negative concept and turn it around to, all right, I don't want him to die a horrible death in a train wreck. I just don't want to be in his class anymore. Excellent.
Like I say, my mother, who was not into magic or psychic phenomena, although she did like using a Ouija board, she's the one who taught it to me, which to this day is something I still have trouble wrapping my head around. It's like the way someone told me about putting up a shield around a person throwing off negative energies. You put up a shield so that only good can go out, only bad gets stuck. So if they start sending out good energy, it goes through. But if they send out something negative, it bounces back onto them, which is something that I can live with that, because you're not doing anything to them. You're just reflecting their own energies back at them. But like I said, as far as putting intent into something, it all comes from you. Whatever way feels good for you. If it works, if you believe in it, it will work. I think it was, I forget who it was. It might have been Eleanor Roosevelt if you, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I was, going back to the working on things in a meeting. I am a great lover of town meetings, and I missed mine this year because I got busy. But I like taking knitting and working on it. But you have to be careful because items will pick up the energy that's around them. And therefore, something you make at town meeting may be full of a lot of people putting out, we are good citizens, we're here, we're committed, we're working with the town, we care about our town. You may get some annoyed people do annoyed things. And so you kind of have to be a bit careful about anything that you're doing in a group. I think probably in a revelry group would be you're going to get a lot of more helpful, supportive energy involved. But if you're doing it in public, you might want to slip it into a silk or plastic or whatever you use to stop energy bag.
Yeah, we used to meet at Panera in New Hampshire.
I still got my Montaga doll here, and that's one of the things that they tell you is that you have to have good feelings. You have to have it be positive. If you are not feeling good about it, don't do it then. Get yourself in a good mood before you do it. That, of course, then you can get into weird things like you must not do it when there is a boy in the room. But that was their thing. It was a version of sexism, I'm going to say. But
read your environment, see how it feels to you.
Yeah.
And if the vibe is good, go with it.
Okay, I have posted a few minutes ago in the chat a link to a Pinterest board that I set up.
Right.
For magical intent. Within that board, there's also a section with some books, only one of which I have, but they're relevant to the topic, so they might be worth checking out. The one I have is called Magical Needlework, which gives you ideas on ways to create something with magical intent. So feel free to look at that board. There are so many sites and articles out there on adding magical intent, on not only adding intent to an object, but to adding intent to things like spring cleaning. The whole
There are a number of books on knitting and magic.
Yeah, and then anybody who's listening to this will send you back to the Mother Hola. Go look for that in the Otherworldly YouTube, because a lot of that comes up in that.
I don't know, were there any relevant comments that I need to address in the chat?
Well, Stitch put in, I'm rubber, you're glue, whatever you say bounces off me and sticks to you, which is high school. It is this playground magic.
That's grammar ground, yeah. Grammar school.
Yeah, and Star Wolf's remark, fiber optic cables seem to work better than the older aluminum copper cables. Interesting.
Yeah, I never thought about that, but if you look at it, we have aluminum, we got copper, these are metals, they conduct. But what is a fiber optic cable but a strand of pure quartz? It is gemstone communications.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I never thought about that before.
Yeah, I had a beautiful. This is another thing we maybe ought to talk about. When Lois SewMagical was talking about things you bought. We go to events, and I hope we'll be able to go back to events at some point and see something that is beautiful and calls to you, and it wants to come home with you. And I think
Yeah.
we've experienced that, and you pick it up, and the energy feels good, and so you take home a wand or a what other piece that needs to come home with you. And I think that we may have experienced that. I have picked up some strange things, and sometimes strange things appear. There was a small brass head which nobody wanted to be around it. We buried it in salt. We put it in the sun. We put it in the moon. It was like this thing was just full of energy that was creepy, and we finally got rid of it. I'm not sure how. It was very cool looking, but at the same time, icky, full of icky energy. So when you said cleansing, I was thinking, yes, sometimes one must cleanse.
Mm-hmm.
I fully
Which-
believe that sometimes we come across objects, whether at a flea market or an event or wherever, that they may not be for us, but they're not for anyone else either. And we're meant to be the caretaker or the destructor.
Mm.
Just
Yeah,
keep it
that's a
out of other
pretty
people's
serious
hands.
responsibility to decide that something must not exist anymore.
Yeah. Or sometimes we're the vehicle by which it's going to get to the person it does belong to.
Mhm.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, the
Yes.
steward business is,
I
that's
once
old
found an
news.
amethyst bracelet on the ground in Syracuse. Years later, I met Bill and then moved to New Hampshire, and I found a woman in a crystal store in New Hampshire that I realized it absolutely must belong to her. So I gave it to her right then. I was wearing it that day.
Yeah.
And I don't mind having that role. I don't mind giving up the amethyst bracelet that I like so much.
No, if you're just the steward of something and you do get that where you feel like it's important for you to hang on to it, but it's not yours in some way.
Yeah. I
So
mean, I
you-
make so
you
many
kinda-
crafts, to bring it back around to subject, I make so many crafts that I don't have a specific purpose for. I just wanted to make it.
Mhm.
And I've assumed that eventually I'm going to find the person it belongs to.
Right.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, I not myself. And sometimes I'll pick something up and said, not sure why I got this. And then 2 years later, it's like talking to somebody and said, oh, this is for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Bill got handed a wonderful quartz crystal that way one day.
Yeah.
But what we do all in our community respond to what I would call silent signals
Yes.
Mm.
in a way that sometimes the other communities don't. So, but I
Yeah.
loved what Lois was, what SewMagical was saying about using dolls positively. Historically, puppet work, even though you may be sticking pins in, the pin is to pin, it is to attach, it is to nail the intent to the target. It is not intended to necessarily harm the target. And
Right.
I get that.
Which is
Yeah.
and a lot of
Totally a different take.
puppet work all over the world is not, it is positive, even though we find little dolls with sharp things stuck in. You find
Yeah.
a knife stuck into it, yeah, I'm going to suggest that.
Okay, that's a little
Yeah.
different.
But,
On the other hand, for people who are uncomfortable with the pins because to them they symbolize harm, tie a ribbon, tie a string, tie a piece of yarn. And that would
Something
be
binding.
done. Yeah.
but yes, anytime you're doing something with intent. Lois, were you going to be talking at all more about food? Because cooking with intent is
Yes.
That's not an area that I'm familiar with, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
Well,
I think
when you
that's,
started on that,
I
the
think,
packing lunch, I was thinking of that.
Yeah.
I think that might be something that is more your field.
Yeah, yes, it is.
Well, as Feast
down
of
to
Cracks,
the very basic of drawing a heart in the peanut butter on the sandwich before you close it. You know, that's magic.
Yeah.
You know,
and now
magic
that
and
I,
magic. Please and thank
having
you.
heard all of this and thinking about it, I don't do as much cooking as I'd like to do. I don't do as much cooking as I used to do.
We're not as capable as
mean,
we used to be.
I make a wicked good pizza. I make an excellent loaf of bread, and I've enjoyed doing that. But I suddenly realized that it doesn't matter so much. Is that when you sit down and say, I need to feed Jen or I need to feed me,
Or
I
us.
then say, I need something that's nutritious, something tasty, something that's reasonable, something I can do.
Something
And I
achievable with
let
the
that,
spoons we have left.
right. And I let that guide me. So I have to assume that as boring and ordinary as it may look, there is some kind of magical process going on there. Because every time I approach food, and you know, you could even flip it over and bring Mother Hulda in here, that keeping a clean kitchen is part of the magic of doing good food. Because, you know, it's an uphill slog on the days when I haven't got the dishes done. Whereas, you know, if the kitchen's clean when I walk in, there's nothing in my way. So I try to approach the kitchen and the food as two aspects of the same thing. And it's Mother Hulda who helps me with cleaning the kitchen. But as far as I don't know if there's a spirit I could invoke about cooking better or cooking more or cooking differently. But I just do try to keep that focused. And I see Starl commenting about spices, and Jen has commented that I seem to have a talent for spicing things.
Mhm.
That I'll smell something and or taste it, and I'm thinking it needs something, but what? And then I'll go and I'll do something, and when I get it right, it's like, wow, that tastes good. But that's again magic, because there's something so subtle about spices that it's really hard to quantify it. I mean, you know, you're trying to figure out what to add, and you wave the fumes up in your nose. Seen straight out of Ratatouille. But
that is a talent. That is a gift that not everybody has.
right.
Yeah, I think Bill may be a kitchen witch as much as anything.
Yeah, I suppose that's probably true. And I don't want to be found hanging next to the sink, but
Starwolf's comment.
Yeah, I see that too. Well, that's somebody once commented that things that are too hot that you eat will come back to bite you in the ass the next day. But the reality is that maybe I am a kitchen witch. You know, that's some of my magic does happen there, because in spite of all the obstacles, we still get fed. And
Yeah.
still have a sanitary and clean kitchen to work in. And I so do love cooking. Oh, yeah. Thinking back to when I was freaking high school, I was working in the boardwalk, Seaside Heights, New Jersey, in a pizza stand. And one day there was a major crisis because the owner couldn't come to work. He had eaten at somebody else's stand and gotten food poisoning. And we couldn't find our regular pie man. I suddenly had to learn how to make pizza. And so there I am. I've got these two monstrous Blodgett pizza ovens, and we're selling pizza by the slice, and I'm going crazy trying to remember everything Jack would do when he made a pizza. And I ended up being pretty good at it, actually. And one of, when I can get it together, one of our better meals is a pizza that I've made. So yeah, I'm a kitchen witch, I guess. Maybe I should wear the gray pointy hat when I'm in the kitchen.
There you go.
Yeah, why not? We do have, this is one of the things that I try and say, and I probably say it so often that people get bored, but people have magic. It's just a given. People are psychic. Everybody has these abilities that you can ignore the same way you could ignore musical ability or artistic ability or athletic ability. We have these abilities. If you practice with them, you get better at them. But there is, humans can manipulate energy, and therefore people, you get your weather witches, you get your kitchen witches, you get your makers, you get your healers, you get your telepaths. We all do all of these things, and it's just a natural human thing, but we don't all do the same thing.
No, and we don't always acknowledge our own gifts, because I realize that the brilliant work that I did at Adaptech for 2.5 years as a test engineer, which really probably proved more than anything that I'm a technomage. Because I did things, I would, they would be struggling over a problem and I come in and I would say things like, that feels like, or that smells like a driver bug. And I would be right. So, I still had all of the mathematics and I still had all of the technical skills, but I had a feeling for the systems. So I was a technomage, and now I'm a kitchen witch. And I think it probably proves that me, with my heavily intellectual bias, still have magic. And that's been an adjustment to realize that for all that, I've always been about order and regularity and precision, and worked in fields like high tech and accounting, where all of this mattered. I can still go into the kitchen and whip up something.
Yeah. Well, I think we are getting close to the end.
Yeah, we're a minute or two away, and Starwolf just had to pack it in.
Did you have any final things that you wanted to say? It occurs to me now that we're at time. One of the things you said at the very beginning was ritual, that repeating things. One of the very, very traditional things that was part of magic was spinning and spinning, but any repetitive thing tends to put you into a trance. And that has been something that women and men have used since the beginning. If it's going to trance you out by the repetition, you can magic it. Just spinning off of your earlier thought, which I wanted to hammer home, add my own 2 cents, because I do that.
Add your own spin to it.
Well, I suddenly just had a thought, because I'm very much attached to my routine, my daily routine. And I suddenly realized that ritual is routine with intent and purpose, as opposed to habitual repetition. And I never realized that you could transmute one into the other.
Oh,
yeah.
Good. Then I think that this show has been useful.
Oh, yes. As always.
I'm typing down rituals, routine with intent and purpose.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so many crafts, especially fiber arts, are so repetitive.
Mhm.
Cross stitch, in one hole, out the other, in one hole, out the other.
Mhm.
You know,
Easy
sewing.
out. But
Yeah.
anyway, so thank you very much for
Yes, thank you.
gathering this information for us in one place. It's not something I think clearly that we don't necessarily know, but gathering it into 1 hour is very useful. So thank you.
Yes,
I'm-
I really hope anybody who watches the video on YouTube will get as much out of it as we did, because this is, well, I said I wasn't sure I wanted to be here tonight. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
But, well, now I would be really annoyed if I had missed it.
But
Let's let Tchipakkan close out, though.
it's synchronicity. If they're
Hmm.
watching it, it's good for them. So anyway, I'm going to end this one now and remind everybody to do come to the tell your friends about Changing Time, about Otherworldly every Wednesday, and
Mhm.
tell your friends about Changing Times, Changing Worlds, which will be happening virtually in the fall, November 7th through 13th, scattered across
Okay.
evenings, Monday through Friday, and then Saturday, all day Saturday and Sunday, which should be fun. Okay, but thank you again, Lois, and good
Yes.
and farewell, everybody.
Yes.
To,